I built my life with soft filters and harder lies, and it looked perfect. The studio smelled like coffee and hot ring lights. Ava Brooks said, "The first time I lied to my followers, I called it content. The word felt clean and harmless. The day the brand checks cleared, the silence inside me grew teeth." Marcus Vail said, "Authenticity is a lever, not a virtue." I nodded, like a well-trained puppet. Lila Trent said, "You okay, Eva?" I smiled at the lens and swallowed the question. The crowd roared in numbers, a tide that never touched shore. Sloan Ryder said, "Nice life, Queen. Hope it's real." My thumb hovered over the heart and pretended it was. The ghost stood behind the monitor, a shadow that breathed in sync with me. I thought the mask would make me stronger. It only made me loud. Ava Brooks said, "I hired actors to be my friends because the real ones left." The room clapped on command. My chest stayed quiet. I watched the counter climb and felt myself vanish. Morning smelled like new money and old fear. I learned to breathe on cue. Ava Brooks said, "Good morning, angels," and the script kept my voice steady. The city outside forgot me as soon as it woke. Marcus Vail said, "We launched the friendship arc today." He sketched smiles on a whiteboard like product logos. Lila Trent said, "Real plans tonight?" I laughed and checked the call sheet. The crowd wanted brunch photos and inside jokes. They wanted proof I was loved, packaged in 12 seconds. Sloan Ryder said, "Authenticity, darling, try it sometime," and the post spiked anyway. The ghost pressed against my ribs, counting the beats between takes. I used to fear being invisible. Now I feared being seen without the varnish. Ava Brooks said, "If I fake it long enough, maybe it turns true." The room agreed with soft beeps. I pressed publish and pretended I felt human. The casting email called them friends, but paid them hourly. Ava Brooks said, "We need chemistry," and the coordinator wrote back with headshots. Marcus Vail said, "Pick 2 with clean timelines." I scrolled through strangers with perfect teeth. Lila Trent said, "You could just invite your old classmates." I edited the memory into a caption and deleted the faces. The crowd adored the teaser, a carousel of laughter that never happened. Sloan Ryder said, "Bot smiles look cheap, and the algorithm rewarded the shade." The ghost whispered that I once had a kitchen table that knew my name. I muted the whisper and chose a brunette and a golden retriever grin. Ava Brooks said, "Welcome to the team," while my palms itched with static. The contract called it content synergy. My pulse called it surrender. Rehearsal felt like worship. We practiced laughter until it rang clean. The actors learned where to stand so the sun would love them. Ava Brooks said on my line, "Touch my shoulder," and the room nodded. Marcus Vail said, "We sell intimacy, not reality." Lila Trent said, "This is getting weird," and I labeled her concern as noise. The crowd would meet my new friends tonight, wrapped in golden hour. Sloan Ryder went live nearby and mapped my hashtags like a hunter. The ghost set a metronome in my lungs, each beat a warning bell. I thought of the small apartment I left behind and its honest dust. Ava Brooks said, "One more from the top," and the smile snapped back like elastic. The first take landed like a dart in a soft board. Numbers leapt as if they had hearts. Ava Brooks said, "They love us," and the actors smiled because the contract said so. Marcus Vail said, "Pin it, boost it, seed comments." Lila Trent said, "Do you love it?" I scrolled and pretended the phone was warm. The crowd typed devotion like confetti cannons. Sloan Ryder posted a side-by-side and drew red circles around my joy. The ghost stood in the doorway, asking who would clean up after the applause. Ava Brooks said, "Tomorrow we go bigger," and the room glowed like a fever. The likes climbed a bright ladder to nowhere. I climbed with them, step by step, leaving fingerprints in the dust. I woke before the feed did, and let the quiet judge me. The mirror gave me back a stranger with perfect lighting. Ava Brooks said, "She looks capable," and I meant the girl in my grid. My sink held makeup wipes like small surrender flags. Marcus Vale said stay aspirational, and the word felt like a leash. Lila Trent said, "Who are you when it's dark?" And the question sat between us like glass. The crowd praised my glow routine while my skin pulsed from scrubbing. Sloane Ryder said, "Filters are for cowards," and posted a branded bare face reveal. The ghost stood beside the mirror and tilted her head like mine. I whispered that success was proof I deserved air. The echo sounded rented. Ava Brooks said, "I am not lonely," and the room coughed at the lie. I practiced breathing until it looked expensive. We hid in the parking garage because it smelled like reality. Lila Trent said, "You can tell me the truth," and her voice did not try to sell me anything. I watched my breath fog and pretended it was a contract clause. Ava Brooks said, "I don't know where I end," and the word end rang like metal. Marcus Vale called twice, and the screen pulsed with urgency. The crowd asked for a story time while my story sagged like wet cloth. Lila Trent said, "I miss your weird laugh, and I wondered where I put it." Sloane Ryder pinged a live invite I could not stomach. The ghost crouched on the concrete and counted the oil stains. I said I was fine and felt the parking level dip. Lila Trent said, "Let me take you home," and I nodded like a locked door. The silence felt brave until it felt like failure. Old photos live where shame sleeps. I opened a storage bin, and the past exhaled dust. Ava Brooks said she wanted to be chosen, and the girl in the Polaroid smiled with crooked courage. My mother's kitchen had bad lighting and honest floors. Marcus Vale said, "Origin content performs," and I lined up memories like products. The crowd adored rags to riches so long as the rags were photogenic. Lila Trent said, "You were happy there," and I corrected her with captions. Sloane Ryder said, "Nostalgia sells," and her post wore my childhood like a coat. The ghost stirred the box and found a birthday card with my real handwriting. I felt the room tilt toward a simpler gravity. Ava Brooks said, "I traded warm rooms for bright rooms, and the trade tasted metallic." I walked through a meet and greet like a ghost in designer shoes. The crowd said, "We love you," and their eyes measured me like a mirror. I practiced gratitude until it sounded like an alarm. Ava Brooks said, "Tell me your stories," and they handed me versions of mine. Marcus Vale said, "Hit your beats," and I nodded on schedule. Sloane Ryder posted from across the room and the air thinned. Lila Trent said, "You need water," and I needed a door. The ghost threaded between ring lights and collected pieces of me like tokens. A fan cried, and I held her and felt nothing, and then too much. I signed a phone case and forgot my signature. Ava Brooks said, "I am here," and the sentence shook like stage truss. Night folded over the city and left me unwrapped. I sat on the floor where the Wi-Fi was strongest and the courage was thin. Ava Brooks said, "Does anyone know me?" And the lamp answered with heat. Marcus Vale's calendar invited me to tomorrow's feelings. Lila Trent said, "You can stop," and the offer vibrated like a wrong note. The crowd slept inside their blue rectangles, still scrolling in my head. Sloane Ryder said, "See you at sunrise," and the promise felt like a threat. The ghost lay beside me and traced my outline like chalk. I pictured deleting everything and becoming a rumor. Ava Brooks said, "I want to be loved without proof," and the words trembled like fledgling wings. The dark kept my secret and kept me awake. The brand hired a rooftop and asked me to sell belonging by the hour. Marcus Vale said, "We need friends with range," and the coordinator unpacked smiles like props. Ava Brooks said, "Make it look easy," while my chest tied knots. Lila Trent said, "You can still call it off," and the city wind shook its head. The actors learned our inside jokes from cue cards, then laughed on Mark. The crowd wanted a candor I could only rent. Sloane Ryder said, "Staging joy is still theater," and the comment burned sugar sweet. The ghost traced the gaffer tape and counted my exits. I admired the skyline and tried to admire myself. Ava Brooks said, "If they believe it, I can believe it," and the lie clicked into place. Marcus Vail said, rolling, "And the sun performed better than all of us." The shot wrapped, but the knot didn't. By midnight, the clip trended, and the knives came wrapped as compliments. Sloane Ryder said, "When friendship is a prop, the scene always squeaks," and her duet carved me neatly. Ava Brooks said, "Ignore the bait," but my pulse took it. The crowd asked for receipts like it was justice. Marcus Vail said, "We pivot with a blooper reel, and strategy tasted like chalk." Lila Trent said, "Do you want to bleed or heal?" And both felt expensive. I scrubbed comments until my thumb numbed, and my soul hummed. The ghost held the mirror at an angle that hurt. I pictured blocking Sloane and blocking the sky. Ava Brooks said, "We can outlast noise," and the night answered with more noise. The algorithm wanted a war and a kiss. I could supply neither without losing something I might need later. A coffee shop line became a stage I did not audition for. A fan said, "You saved me," and I tried to hold the weight of that sentence. Ava Brooks said, "Tell me your win," and her voice cracked on win. The girl recited captions I barely remembered writing. Lila Trent said, "Breathe," and I missed the cue. The crowd swiveled their phones and built a halo I could not step out of. Marcus Vail texted, "Smile wide," and I hunted for teeth that felt mine. Sloane Ryder said, "Caught in the wild," and posted before my latte cooled. The ghost pressed a palm to my back like a brace. I signed the girl's case and heard silence between claps. Ava Brooks said, "I am grateful," and the room shook with relief that sounded practice. I left with coffee I didn't taste. Back home, jealousy sprouted where comfort had lived. Lila Trent said, "You don't even see me anymore," and the words found a chair. Ava Brooks said, "You are the only real thing here," and my mouth believed it more than my schedule did. Marcus Vail said, "We need Lila on camera," and the idea felt like theft. The crowd loved sidekicks who stayed in their lane. Sloane Ryder said, "Careful, fame eats its handlers," and the bite marks matched. The ghost pinched the air between us, measuring distance that a lens would collapse. Lila Trent said, "I miss us, and I wondered when us became content." I promised dinner without phones and penciled it beside a brand live. Ava Brooks said, "You matter," and the sentence looked edited. The silence we shared had subtitles I could not read. The lies needed scaffolding, so we built some. A fake birthday dinner, a surprise captured from 3 angles. Ava Brooks said, "Make the candle count 11, and nobody asked why." Marcus Vail said, "Continuity," and taped a smile to the evening. The actors toasted, like they had known me since summers. Lila Trent said, "I can't find the door out of this," and I heard it slam somewhere. The crowd cheered for the wish I faked. Sloane Ryder said, "Even her laugh is looped," and the clip bloomed like mold. The ghost stood in the corner and blew the candle out in my chest. Ava Brooks said, "Bigger lies burn brighter," and the wax ran toward my hands. I counted followers and forgot the number for mercy. Contracts arrived dressed like salvation and read like threats. Marcus Vail said, "We stage a charity crisis," and the word crisis slid cold down my spine. He wanted tears that could be paused and monetized. Ava Brooks said, "People are not props," and my voice sounded like a PR draft. Marcus Vail said, "We help a shelter, cameras on, impact guaranteed." Lila Trent said, "If it's good, why does it feel wrong?" The crowd adored redemption arcs with affiliate links attached. Sloane Ryder said, "Philanthropy season already," and her laugh rang like metal. The ghost stood in the corner counting the ways this could break me. I pictured a hand that needed help and a lens that needed hunger. Ava Brooks said, "No exploitation," and my calendar smirked. Marcus Vail said, "Decide by noon," and the clock joined the pressure. My mouth whispered, "Yes," while my chest whispered, "Run." Secrets travel faster than cars on empty highways. I, I found Lila crying by the stairwell, breath catching on each rung. Lila Trent said, I told a friend too much, and shame slicked the words. Ava Brooks said, which friend? And the railing felt like ice. My phone buzzed with a new account posting my unposted script. Sloan Ryder said, look who rehearses compassion, and the receipts glowed. Marcus Vale said, spin it as transparency, and my stomach dropped an inch. The crowd pointed and called it accountability with teeth. Lila Trent said, I wanted you to see me, and the admission knocked pictures off my mind. The ghost shook her head like a metronome for regret. Ava Brooks said, I trusted you, and the echo didn't stop. The stairwell smelled like bleach and betrayal, sharp and efficient. I scrolled the leak like it was a diagnosis. Every line from my draft arrived flayed and perfect. Ava Brooks said, she didn't mean to, and the words begged for mercy. Marcus Vale said intent doesn't trend, and the cruelty fit. I drafted an apology and fed it to the flames of revision. Lila Trent said, let me confess, and I pictured her becoming content too. The crowd demanded blood, and then wanted it ethically sourced. Sloan Ryder said, honesty hour, and launched a live dissecting my pulse. The ghost pressed 2 fingers to my throat and counted panic. Ava Brooks said silence is safer, and the silence grew teeth. I watched the timeline kink into a noose and did nothing. The apartment dimmed like a theater right before the scene that hurts. Sloan choreographed my downfall like a dance she'd practiced forever. She stitched the leak to old clips and called it the pattern. Sloan Ryder said the mask always slips, and a million eyes nodded. Ava Brooks said, I am more than the worst cut, and the edit disagreed. The crowd became jurors with ring lights for gavels. Marcus Vale said, counter with receipts, and I searched for a receipt that proved I had a heart. Lila Trent said, I'll speak, and the offer shook like a bridge in wind. The ghost asked if I wanted truth or victory, and waited for the debt. I watched Sloan's graph climb like a rescue ladder that led to my roof. Ava Brooks said, I won't feed this, and the hunger ate anyway. The comments learned my name and taught it to their knives. By morning, my circle looked like a ring of mirrors. The actors waited for direction that would not come. Marcus Vale said we can replace anyone, and the sentence wore a friendly tie. Lila Trent said, I'm sorry, and the apology arrived barefoot and late. The crowd said, take accountability, and the chorus sounded choreographed. Sloan Ryder posted a victory selfie with a caption about truth. The ghost laid out every script I'd memorized and lit a match I could not see. Ava Brooks said, maybe there never was a circle, and the thought cleared the room. I looked at the contracts and they looked back like eyes. The brand asked for an updated calendar of my conscience. I sent a blank sheet and felt the edges burn my hands. The hashtag detonated before breakfast and sprayed shrapnel through my phone. Marcus Vale said, hold statements until legal clears, and my lungs forgot the steps. Lila Trent said, I'm here, but the room moved like an elevator with no floor. The crowd said, unfollow with purpose, and I heard doors shutting in sequence. Sloan Ryder said, truth trends longer, and her smile sharpened like a headline. Brands paused me like a song they were tired of pretending to like. The ghost sifted my drafts and found the apology with my real pulse. Ava Brooks said they were actors, and the silence that followed was louder than the lie. I watched numbers fall like winter light, thin and unforgiving. Marcus Vale said, we can ride this, and I pictured a wave built from broken glass. I wanted to bleed privately and heal publicly. I got the opposite. The office smelled like printer heat and blame. Marcus Vale said we deny intent and donate proceeds, and he slid a script that fit like a muzzle. Ava Brooks said, I did this, and the words tasted metal. He paced the glass like a shark pretending to be a coach. Lila Trent said, stop measuring her by metrics, and the wall finally listened. The crowd wanted confession, not choreography. Sloane Ryder said, "Watch them pivot," and the clip stitched my face to yesterday's excuses. The ghost placed a hand on mine and pressed for truth like a pulse check. Ava Brooks said, "I'll speak without bullet points," and the air thinned to something honest. Marcus Vail said, "You'll crater the brand," and I realized he meant me. The contract blinked on the table like a slow alarm. We met in the stairwell where echoes keep secrets. Lila Trent said, "It was me," and the sentence sat like a suitcase I'd packed myself. Ava Brooks said, "Why?" and my voice trembled on the vowel. She twisted her sleeve and confessed to wanting to be seen by the light that erased her. The crowd had never learned her name, only her angles. Sloane Ryder, said sources close, and I could draw Lila's shadow with my eyes closed. The ghost whispered that love becomes a blade when fed with envy. Lila Trent said, "I wanted you back before the brand," and the apology cut carefully. Ava Brooks said, "You broke me open, and the space filled with air that hurt to breathe." I didn't forgive, not yet, but the word began assembling a chair. The feed turned courtroom, and I stood, without counsel. The crowd said, "We made you, we can unmake you," and the verdict arrived in waves. Marcus Vail, said Mutant Post later, and I felt the rope of strategy against my throat. Sloane Ryder said, "Accountability is love," and the sentence kissed like frostbite. I opened live, and let the room see my unsteady hands. Ava Brooks said, "I lied and I harmed, and the truth burned clean through varnish." Comments split into knives and bandages. The ghost nodded, as if I had finally paid the right bill. I did not ask for forgiveness, only for the chance to stop performing pain. The clock on the wall forgot how to move. After the live, the silence swarmed like bees without a queen. Brand emails softened into legalese goodbyes. Marcus Vail said, "You torched your runway," and I watched the smoke form a path anyway. Lila Trent said, "I'm staying if you want me," and the offer built a small shelter. The crowd kept shouting, but the room had new acoustics. Sloane Ryder said, "She finally told the truth, and for once the sentence didn't stab." The ghost sat beside me on the floor and counted the breaths I could afford. Ava Brooks said, "If this is the bottom, I can learn its shape," and the words didn't wobble. I closed the laptop, and the dark felt less like a judge. The night held, and so did I. Silence became my only platform, and it did not ask for links. I turned off notifications, and the room exhaled like a tired beast. Ava Brooks said, "I need quiet that doesn't sell me back to myself." I unplugged the ring light and watched the shadows grow soft. The apartment discovered its own voice, a hum without applause. Lila Trent said, "I can stay outside the door," and the offer rested gently. I ate cereal without filming the spoon and felt feral and free. The crowd receded to a shoreline I chose not to visit. Marcus Vail said, "We still have options," and the word options felt predatory. I listed what I could keep if nothing returned my name. The ghost nodded from the hallway and matched my breathing. Ava Brooks said, "I will not curate this moment," and the moment stayed. I opened the box of old notebooks and found the person I abandoned. The pages smelled like pencils and summers that did not perform. Ava Brooks said, "You wrote before anyone watched," and the truth rang low. I traced a crooked sentence that held more courage than my feed. The ghost sat beside me and set down a mirror without glass. Lila Trent said, "Read it aloud," and I did until my throat steadied. The crowd became a rumor in another room, merciful and distant. Marcus Vail called, and I let the ringtone complete its small life. Sloane Ryder posted a victory graph that I chose not to see. I felt the floor hold me with stubborn kindness. Ava Brooks said, "I want work that survives being unseen." The quiet nodded like a teacher who knew my name. Decision arrived without trumpets, just the click of a pen. I sketched 2 doors, and both asked for blood. Ava Brooks said, "Disappear or rebuild," and the words weighed equal. Lila Trent said, "Choose the one that returns your pulse." My hands remembered how to write without staging the ink. The crowd would call either choice cowardice or courage, depending on trend. Marcus Vale texted a rebrand deck with friendly fonts and sharp teeth. I closed it and felt the first inch of spine grow back. The ghost pointed at the smaller door and smiled like rain. Ava Brooks said, "I choose truth even if it eats my name." The fear did not leave, but it learned my boundaries. I opened the smaller door and let some light in. I returned the brand money and wrote a private apology to the people unseen. Ava Brooks said, "No screenshots," and trusted the message to live in memory. Lila Trent said, "I'll send the wire," and the keyboard clacked like rain. The crowd wanted spectacle, but I offered paperwork and quiet repair. Marcus Vale said, "You are setting fire to bridges," and I answered that footpaths were enough. Sloan Ryder posted another take, slick as ice on glass. The ghost placed a hand on my back as I pressed send. I watched the account shrink and felt my lungs expand. Ava Brooks said, "Every small true thing counts," and the day agreed. I cleaned the studio and kept only the lamp that felt human. Evening hummed like a held note, and I wrote the message that would end the performance. Ava Brooks said, "No music, no edits, just breath and words." I drafted once, then deleted the polish until the bones showed. Lila Trent said, "I'm proud of this quiet," and the compliment landed gently. The crowd would meet me tomorrow or never again. Marcus Vale sent a final call I did not return. The ghost sat in the chair across from me and looked almost alive. Ava Brooks said, "If I vanish, it will be by choice, not shame." I saved the draft and closed the lid like a final bow. Outside, the rain slowed to a kind of listening. My name felt less like a brand and more like a person. I faced the lens without a ring of fire and let the room be small. Ava Brooks said, "I won't defend myself, only describe the truth." My pulse made a soft metronome I didn't hide. The crowd waited like weather about to choose a mood. Lila Trent said, "I'm here off camera," and I breathed like it mattered. Marcus Vale said, "This is career suicide," and the sentence walked out on its own. Sloan Ryder said, "Say it plain," and for once I agreed with my rival. The ghost stood behind the monitor and didn't flinch. Ava Brooks said, "I hired actors to be my friends, and in doing so I forgot how to be one." The room did not argue. I listed harms without discounts or disclaimers. Then I asked for nothing, and the feed felt lighter by an ounce. Memory arrived as a parade without music. Ava Brooks said, "I remember the first unbranded laugh, and the kitchen from before flickered intact." The ghost pointed to the notebook where courage learned to spell. Lila Trent said, "You were loud without microphones," and her smile traveled years in a second. Marcus Vale said, "Potential," and the word wrapped a leash around my throat again. Sloan Ryder said, "You chose the mask," and I nodded at the price tag. The crowd didn't exist in those early frames, and the silence tasted like bread. I watched the montage of smaller rooms and larger hearts. Ava Brooks said, "What I wanted was simple," and simplicity felt athletic. The cuts slowed, then stopped on a face I recognized without filters. I opened the archive like a mausoleum and began the small labor of goodbye. Ava Brooks said unlist, and a column of links dimmed. Lila Trent said, "You can keep the ones that don't sell you," and the cursor hovered kind. Marcus Vale said legacy matters, and I felt the word trying to stake a claim. The crowd wouldn't notice each deletion, only the missing echo. Sloan Ryder said, "She's running," and I corrected her quietly. The ghost said, "You're walking home," and the phrasing fit. I saved the first poem I ever posted and let the branded brunches dissolve. Ava Brooks said, "Good work can survive small rooms," and the trash bin filled like a tide that knew where to go. The page count fell and my chest rose. Outside my window, the market kept its carnival running. Sloan Ryder said, "In the absence of noise, make more," and her graph climbed like ivy. Ava Brooks said, Let her have the stage, and the room applauded no one. Marcus Vale said this was preventable, and the echoes sounded like paperwork. The crowd said we moved on, and the words landed without malice. Lila Trent said, "You don't have to prove a retreat," and the permission softened corners. The ghost watched Sloane bow and did not hiss. I brewed tea that didn't need an aesthetic. Ava Brooks said, "I hope she finds what she's hunting," and I meant it. The calm had weight and purpose, like a coat finally in the right season. I wrote the last caption like a will for a living person. Ava Brooks said, "Thank you for listening when I finally spoke." The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, and then like a bow. Lila Trent said, "I'll lock the door after you," and the key did not rattle. The ghost stepped closer until she was just me, under a lamp. Marcus Vale said, "There's still time to pivot," and time shrugged. The crowd said nothing yet, and the silence felt earned. Ava Brooks said, "I thought I wanted to be remembered, but now I want to be real." The breath after that sentence tasted new. Ava Brooks said, "And that's why you'll never see me online again." I pressed post, and let the quiet crown me.